The dirt hit Beatrice Walsh's back as she bent to lift another feed sack. The laughter of the boys behind the general store cutting through the summer heat of Montezuma, Colorado, like a knife. It was 1879, and she had endured 17 years of this mockery. 17 years of being called names that made her mother's face crumple with helpless rage, and her father look away in shame that she even existed. The year had turned her 18 just last month, but the cruelty had not diminished with her coming of age. She straightened her broad shoulders, hefted the 50-pound sack like it weighed nothing, and walked toward the wagon without giving them the satisfaction of seeing her tears. "Look at her go, boys," one of them called out. "Built like an ox and twice as ugly." Beatrice kept walking. Her dress, sewn from extra fabric because nothing in the catalogs fit her frame, swished against her legs. She was tall, nearly 5 feet 10 inches, with a body that her mother gently called sturdy and everyone else called fat. Her arms were thick, her waist undefined, her face round with full cheeks that flushed red in the mountain sun. She had stopped trying to squeeze herself into corsets 2 years ago when one had split right down the middle during Sunday service. The memory still made her stomach twist. She loaded the feed sack into the wagon bed and turned to go back for another. Her father's mercantile needed restocking, and she was the only one strong enough to do the heavy lifting since her father's back had given out last winter. Her 2 older brothers had left for the silver mines in Leadville, chasing fortune and leaving her behind to shoulder the burden. "Miss Walsh." The voice was deep, quiet, and came from just beside the wagon. Beatrice jumped, nearly dropping the sack she had just picked up. She turned to find a man she had never seen before standing there, his hat in his hands. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. His eyes were a startling blue-green, the color of the mountain lakes in spring. He wore the dusty clothes of a cowboy, chaps marked with trail dirt, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt. "I did not mean to startle you," he said. His voice carried a hint of something foreign, maybe German or Swedish, softened by years in the American West. "I am Harrison Beck. I just hired on at the Double R Ranch north of town." Beatrice stood there, holding the feed sack, waiting for the punchline. Men did not introduce themselves to her. They mocked her or ignored her or occasionally tried to grab at her in dark corners, thinking she should be grateful for any attention at all. "I saw you lifting those sacks," Harrison continued, his eyes steady on her face, not traveling down her body in that way she hated. "That is impressive. I have worked with men who could not heft 50 pounds like that." She blinked. "I'm used to it. May I help you load the rest?" The question was so unexpected that Beatrice almost laughed. Instead, she nodded mutely and watched as this stranger, this cowboy with the gentle accent and startling eyes, began loading her father's supplies with efficient, practiced movements. He did not grunt or show off. He simply worked, and when the wagon was loaded, he nodded to her. "Have a good day, Miss Walsh." He walked away before she could form a response, heading toward the livery stable where a paint horse waited. Beatrice stood beside the wagon, her heart doing something strange in her chest, something unfamiliar and frightening. That night, lying in her narrow bed in the room above the mercantile, she thought about the way he had looked at her. Like she was a person. Like she was worth introducing himself to. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart beat steadily beneath her palm, and told herself not to be foolish. One kind word did not mean anything. One moment of decency did not change the fact that she was what she was, that her body was wrong, that no man would ever truly want her. But sleep came easier that night than it had in years. The next Sunday, Beatrice sat in the back pew of the small church, as she always did. Her mother and father sat up front with the other merchants and business owners, but Beatrice had learned years ago that taking her place in the back saved her family from the whispers and sideways glances. She wore her best dress, a blue calico that her mother had painstakingly sewn, and she kept her eyes on the hymnal. She felt him before she saw him. The pew creaked as someone sat down beside her, and she caught the scent of soap and leather. Her head turned, and there was Harrison Beck, cleaned up for Sunday service, his hair still damp from washing. He met her shocked gaze and smiled, just a small curve of his lips, before turning his attention to Reverend Potter at the front. Beatrice could barely breathe. The whispers started immediately. Who was that cowboy? Why was he sitting with Beatrice Walsh? Did he not know? Someone should tell him. She wanted to sink through the floorboards, to disappear, to run. But Harrison Beck sat solid beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers, and when the congregation stood to sing, his voice rose deep and true beside her quieter alto. After the service, he waited while she gathered her things, then walked beside her out into the bright Colorado sunshine. Her parents stood with a group of other families, and her mother's eyes went wide when she saw Harrison beside Beatrice. "Miss Walsh," Harrison said, "would you introduce me to your parents?" She could only nod. They crossed the churchyard, and Beatrice felt every eye on them. "Mama, Papa, this is Harrison Beck. He works at the Double R Ranch. Mr. Beck, these are my parents, Samuel and Dorothy Walsh." Her father extended his hand cautiously, and Harrison shook it firmly. "Sir, madam, I wonder if I might have your permission to call on your daughter." The silence that followed was absolute. Beatrice felt the blood drain from her face. Her mother's mouth opened and closed. Her father looked at Harrison like he had spoken Chinese. "Call on Beatrice." Her father finally said, "Yes, sir. With your permission, I would like to court her properly." "Young man," Dorothy Walsh said carefully, her eyes darting to her daughter's stricken face, "are you quite certain? Do you understand what you are asking?" Harrison's jaw tightened slightly. "I am asking to spend time with your daughter, madam. I understand perfectly." Samuel Walsh cleared his throat. Well, I suppose, if Beatrice is agreeable." Everyone turned to look at her. Beatrice stood there, her hands clenched in her skirts, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might faint. This had to be a joke. Some elaborate, cruel prank that would end with laughter and humiliation. "Why?" The word burst from her before she could stop it. She looked at Harrison, searching his face for deception. "Why would you want to court me?" Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. "Because I would like to know you better. Because I think you are worth knowing. Is that not enough?" "No one else has ever thought so." "Then everyone else is a fool." He said it simply, stating a fact like he might comment on the weather. Then he turned back to her parents. "May I take her for a walk this afternoon? I will have her home before supper." Her parents looked at each other, carrying on one of those silent conversations that married people could have. Finally, her mother nodded. "Very well, but stay where people can see you." "Of course, madam." An hour later, Beatrice found herself walking beside Harrison Beck along the main street of Montezuma, past the assay office and the saloon and the hotel. She kept waiting for him to explain the joke, to reveal whatever scheme this was. Instead, he talked about himself. He had come from Wyoming, he said, where he had worked on a cattle ranch for 5 years. Before that, he had lived in Nebraska, and before that, his family had emigrated from Germany when he was 12. His father had died during the journey west, and his mother had remarried a farmer in Nebraska. Harrison had struck out on his own at 16, learning the cowboy trade through hard work and determination. "What about you?" he asked. "Have you always lived in Montezuma?" "Yes. My father opened the mercantile 15 years ago when the silver boom started. We came from St. Louis before that, but I was only 3, so I do not remember it. Do you like working in the store? Beatrice considered the question. No one had ever asked her that before. I like the work, I like being useful, I do not like the customers much. Harrison glanced at her. They are unkind to you. It was not a question. Beatrice felt her face flush hot. I am not what people expect a woman to be. I am not dainty or delicate or pretty. You are wrong about the pretty part. She stopped walking. They were at the edge of town now, where the street gave way to the open meadow that stretched toward the mountains. The peaks rose up in the distance, still capped with snow even in July. You do not have to lie to me. Harrison stopped too, turning to face her fully. I am not lying. You have beautiful eyes, the warmest brown I have ever seen. Your face is kind. Your smile, the few times I have seen it, lights up everything around you. And your body, he gestured, his hand taking in her form. You are strong. You are solid. You are real. Do you know how rare that is? How precious. Beatrice felt tears burning in her eyes. Everyone else says I am fat, ugly, built like livestock. Everyone else is wrong. Harrison took a step closer. Miss Walsh, Beatrice, may I tell you something? She nodded, not trusting her voice. I grew up on a farm. I have worked with animals and the land my whole life. I know what strength looks like, what real beauty looks like. It is not the painted china dolls in the catalogs. It is not the corseted women who faint at the first sign of hard work. It is you, lifting 50-pound sacks like they are nothing. It is you, standing tall even when people mock you. It is you, being kind to your parents even though I can see in your eyes that you are hurting. A tear slipped down her cheek. Harrison reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed it away with his thumb. His touch was gentle, calloused, warm. You are strong and beautiful just as you are, he said quietly. I hope someday you will believe that. Beatrice let out a shaky breath. Why does it matter to you what I believe? Because I think I could fall in love with you, Harrison said. If you would let me. The world seemed to tilt. Beatrice grabbed his arm to steady herself, and he was solid beneath her hand, real and warm and present. You do not even know me. Then let me know you, that is all I am asking. Time. A chance. She looked up into his eyes, those impossible blue-green eyes, and saw nothing but sincerity there. Slowly, carefully, she nodded. All right. You can have your chance. The smile that broke across Harrison's face was like sunrise. The summer unfolded in a series of small miracles. Harrison called on her every Sunday after church. He walked with her through town, sat with her on her parents' porch, brought her wildflowers picked from the high meadows. He talked to her like she had thoughts worth hearing, asked her opinions on everything from politics to the best way to make bread. He made her laugh, which was perhaps the greatest miracle of all, but the town did not approve. The whispers followed them everywhere. What was that handsome cowboy doing with Beatrice Walsh? Was it a bet? Was he blind? Someone should warn him. The cruelty that had always been part of Beatrice's life intensified, as if her neighbors were offended that she had dared to reach above her station. Martha Henderson, the banker's daughter, was the worst. She was everything Beatrice was not, tiny and blonde and perfect, with a waist so small men could span it with their hands. She had decided years ago that Beatrice Walsh was her personal project for mockery, and Harrison's attention only inflamed her spite. One afternoon in August, Beatrice was in the general store helping a customer when Martha walked in with 2 of her friends. They pretended to shop, but Beatrice could feel their eyes on her, could hear their barely suppressed giggles. I heard Harrison Beck is courting the Walsh girl, Martha said loudly. Can you imagine? Someone should tell him the truth, one of her friends replied. That she is too big to fit through a normal door. That she has to have her dresses made from tent canvas. That no horse could carry her. The customer Beatrice was helping, Old Mrs. Chen from the laundry looked at her with sympathy. Beatrice kept her face carefully blank, finished the transaction, and watched Mrs. Chen leave. Then she turned to face Martha and her friends. "Is there something I can help you ladies find?" she asked, her voice steady despite the way her hands shook. Martha smiled, sweet as poisoned honey. "Oh no, we were just leaving. We could not afford anything here anyway, not with the prices your father charges." She leaned in conspiratorially, though her voice remained loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. "Tell me, Beatrice, what does it feel like to know that Harrison Beck is only courting you out of pity? Everyone knows he feels sorry for you. He probably thinks he is doing a good deed, like charity work." The words hit like physical blows. Beatrice had thought them herself in her darkest moments, but hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a way that stole her breath. "That is enough." The voice came from the doorway, and everyone turned to see Harrison standing there, his face like thunder. "Miss Henderson, you will apologize to Miss Walsh right now." Martha's face went pale, then flushed red. "I was only telling the truth." Harrison walked into the store, his boots loud on the wooden floor. He was not a violent man, but there was something in his stance that made Martha step back. "The truth? Let me tell you the truth, Miss Henderson. Beatrice Walsh is worth 10 of you. She is kind where you are cruel. She is honest where you are false. She is strong in body and spirit while you are weak in both, and I am not courting her out of pity. I am courting her because she is the finest woman I have ever met, and I thank God every day that she gave me a chance." The store was silent. Martha's friends had backed toward the door. Martha herself looked like she might cry, but there was anger in her eyes too, the rage of someone who had been challenged and found wanting. "You will regret this," she said to Harrison. "My father is an important man in this town." "Your father is a banker," Harrison said evenly. "I am a cowboy. He has no power over me." He turned to Beatrice, and his face softened. "Are you all right?" Beatrice nodded, though she was not sure it was true. Martha and her friends fled, their skirts rustling with indignation. The other customers in the store carefully went back to their business, pretending they had seen nothing. Harrison came around the counter and took Beatrice's hand. "I meant every word I said. I know." Her voice came out as a whisper. "But Harrison, this is my life. This is what it is like for me every day. Are you sure you want to be part of this? People will talk about you. They will question your judgment. Martha's father does have influence. You could lose your job." "Let them talk," Harrison said. "Let them question. My job is secure. The Double R Ranch is owned by a man who judges workers by their merit, not their associations. And even if I lost it, I would find another. But I will not find another you, Beatrice. There is only one of you in this whole world, and I will not let you go just because small-minded people cannot see what I see." Beatrice felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she had forgotten it was there. Hope, maybe. Or the possibility of hope. "What do you see?" "I see a woman I am falling in love with," Harrison said. "I see my future if you will have me. We have only known each other 2 months. I know. I am not asking you to marry me today. I am just asking you to believe that this is real. That I am real. That what I feel for you is real." Beatrice looked down at their joined hands, his tanned and scarred from hard work, hers equally rough from lifting and hauling. They matched, she realized. They fit. "I am trying to believe it," she said quietly. "It is just hard. When you have been told your whole life that you are not enough, that you are too much, that you are wrong, it is hard to believe anything else." Harrison raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Then I will tell you every day until you believe it. You are enough. You are perfect. You are exactly right, just as you are." The tears came then, and Beatrice could not stop them. Harrison pulled her into his arms, and she went, resting her head on his shoulder and letting herself cry for the first time in years. He held her like she was precious, like she was delicate despite her size and strength. He held her like she mattered. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered into his shirt. "I am terrified, but I am falling." She felt him smile against her hair. "Then we will fall together." September came, and with it the first hints of autumn in the high mountains. The aspen trees began to turn gold, and the air carried a crisp edge in the mornings. Harrison's courtship continued, now openly and defiantly. He walked with Beatrice through town, sat beside her in church, brought her to social gatherings despite the shocked whispers. He introduced her to his friends from the ranch, good men who treated her with the respect they showed Harrison. But the town's cruelty did not abate. If anything, it grew worse. Someone painted harsh words on the side of the mercantile one night, words that made Beatrice's father go white with rage and Harrison spend an entire day scrubbing them away. Martha Henderson's campaign of mockery intensified, and she recruited others to her cause. Beatrice found notes tucked into her market basket, cruel drawings left on the church steps, laughter that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. The breaking point came in late September, at the town's harvest dance. Beatrice had not wanted to go. She knew what happened at dances, had watched from the sidelines for years as other girls were swept around the floor while she stood alone. But Harrison had asked her, his eyes so full of hope that she could not refuse. She wore her best dress, the blue calico, and her mother had helped her pin up her dark hair. When Harrison arrived to collect her, the look on his face made her feel almost pretty. Almost. The dance was held in the town hall, a large room decorated with paper lanterns and autumn leaves. Musicians sat on a small stage, playing reels and waltzes. The room was full of people, and every one of them turned to stare when Beatrice and Harrison entered. "Ignore them," Harrison murmured, his hand steady at the small of her back. "Just look at me." He led her onto the dance floor, and Beatrice felt her heart hammering. She was not graceful. Her body was not made for dancing. Everyone was watching. Everyone was judging. But then the music started, and Harrison took her in his arms, and nothing else mattered. He led her through a simple waltz, his steps sure and confident. Beatrice followed, and to her amazement she did not stumble. She did not trip. She moved with him, her body responding to his guidance, and for the first time in her life she felt what it was like to dance. "You are doing wonderfully," Harrison said, smiling down at her. "I have never danced before," she confessed. "You are a natural." They waltzed through the entire song, and when it ended, Harrison led her through another and another. Other couples joined them on the floor, but Beatrice barely noticed. She was lost in the music, in the feeling of Harrison's arms around her, in the impossible joy of being wanted. And then someone tripped her. Later, she would not be able to say for certain who it was. Martha Henderson was nearby, and her friend Sarah Johnson, and several young men who had laughed at Beatrice for years. All she knew was that one moment she was dancing, and the next her foot caught on something and she was falling. She hit the floor hard, her weight making the impact worse. The music stopped, the dancing stopped, everyone turned to stare, and the laughter started, cruel and sharp. "I told you she could not dance," someone said. "Like a cow trying to waltz," another voice added. "She probably broke the floorboards." Beatrice lay there, her dress twisted around her legs, her face burning with humiliation so intense it felt like dying. This was it. This was the moment she had always feared, the moment that proved she did not belong, that she would never belong. And then Harrison was there, kneeling beside her, his face a mask of fury unlike anything she had ever seen. "Who did this?" His voice cut through the laughter like a whip. "Who tripped her?" The laughter died. No one answered. Harrison stood, his hands clenched into fists. Someone here deliberately tripped Beatrice. Someone here thought it would be funny to hurt her. I am asking one more time. Who was it? Still silence. Beatrice struggled to sit up, wanting to crawl away, to disappear, to die, but Harrison turned back to her and gently helped her to her feet. He brushed off her skirt, checked her for injuries, his touch tender even as rage simmered in his eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. "Only my pride," she whispered. "Then let us go. We are leaving." "Harrison, no, you do not have to leave because of me." He cupped her face in his hands, right there in front of everyone, and looked into her eyes. "Beatrice Walsh, I will always leave because of you. I will always choose you. Over dances, over towns, over the approval of small-minded fools. You are my choice. You are my only choice." Then, as the entire town watched in stunned silence, Harrison Beck kissed Beatrice Walsh. It was her first kiss, and it was perfect. His lips were soft and warm, his hands gentle on her face. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was beloved, like she was everything he had ever wanted. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. "I love you," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I am in love with you, Beatrice Walsh. I have been since the day I met you, and I will be until the day I die, and anyone who has a problem with that can go to hell." The gasps that followed were audible. People did not swear in the town hall. Men did not declare their love in front of everyone. This was not how things were done. Beatrice did not care. She threw her arms around Harrison's neck and kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all the love and fear and hope and desperate joy. When they broke apart, she was crying, but she was smiling too. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much." Harrison grinned, that beautiful sunrise smile, and took her hand. "Then let us go home. We have better things to do than waste our time here." They walked out of the town hall together, leaving the shocked whispers behind them. Outside, the night air was cool and sweet, and the stars were scattered across the black sky like diamonds. Harrison helped Beatrice into his wagon, and they rode back to the mercantile in comfortable silence. When they arrived, he walked her to the door. "I meant what I said in there. I love you. And I know we have only been courting a few months, but I also know my own heart. I want to marry you, Beatrice. I want to build a life with you, but I will wait as long as you need. I will court you for years if that is what you want. I just need you to know that this is forever for me. You are forever for me." Beatrice looked up at this man, this impossible, wonderful man who had walked into her life and changed everything. "Ask me," she said. "What? Ask me to marry you. Now. I do not want to wait. I do not want to spend another day wondering if this is real. I know my heart too, Harrison. I know that I love you and I want to be your wife." Harrison's breath caught. Then, slowly, he sank to one knee right there on the porch. "Beatrice Walsh, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my love for the rest of our lives?" "Yes," she said, and she was crying again, but these were happy tears, joyful tears. "Yes, yes, yes." Harrison stood and kissed her again, and Beatrice felt like she was flying. The door behind them opened, and her parents stood there, her mother with her hand over her mouth, her father looking stunned. "Papa, Mama," Beatrice said, unable to stop smiling. "Harrison and I are getting married." Her mother burst into tears and pulled Beatrice into a fierce hug. Her father shook Harrison's hand, his grip tight and grateful. "You will take care of her," he said. "It was not a question." "With my life," Harrison promised. They were married 3 weeks later in the same church where Harrison had first sat beside Beatrice. It was a small wedding, attended by Beatrice's parents, a few friends from the ranch, and several families who had always been kind to the Walshes. Martha Henderson did not attend, nor did most of the town's elite. Beatrice did not care. She stood before Reverend Potter in a new dress, her mother had sewn, white with blue ribbons, and pledged herself to Harrison Beck with her whole heart. When the Reverend said Harrison could kiss his bride, he did so with such tenderness that Beatrice heard her mother sob happily behind them. They walked out of the church hand in hand, husband and wife, ready to face whatever came next together. Harrison had saved his wages and bought a small piece of land north of Montezuma, 20 acres with a creek running through it and a view of the mountains that took Beatrice's breath away. The cabin was modest, just 2 rooms, but Harrison promised to expand it as they needed. They spent their first weeks as a married couple fixing up the property, Harrison working on the ranch during the day while Beatrice managed their home and helped her father at the mercantile a few times a week. It was not an easy life. The work was hard, the winters in Colorado were brutal, and money was always tight, but Beatrice had never been happier. She woke each morning beside a man who loved her, who told her she was beautiful even when her hair was a mess and her face was red from scrubbing laundry. Harrison touched her like she was precious, made love to her like she was a treasure, held her at night like he was afraid she might disappear. "I never thought I could have this," she told him one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest, his arms around her. "I never thought anyone would love me like this." Harrison pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then everyone who came before me was a fool. I am just the lucky one who was smart enough to see what was right in front of me. What if I am not enough? What if you wake up one day and realize you could have done better?" He shifted so he could look into her eyes. "Beatrice Beck, you listen to me. You are not just enough. You are everything. You are the strongest woman I know. You are kind and good and true. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to be a better man. There is no better than you. There is only you." She kissed him then, trying to show him with her body what words could not express. How grateful she was. How much she loved him. How he had saved her not by changing her, but by loving her exactly as she was. The seasons turned. Autumn gave way to winter, and the snows came heavy to the mountains. Harrison and Beatrice spent the long, dark months huddled together, keeping their cabin warm, talking for hours about everything and nothing. They made plans for the future, for the ranch they would build, for the children they hoped to have. In the spring, when the snow melted and the meadows turned green, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. She told Harrison on a Sunday morning in April, as they sat on their porch watching the sun rise over the mountains. "We are going to have a baby," she said simply. Harrison went very still. Then he turned to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears, and took her hands in his. "Truly, truly. I am about 3 months along, I think. The baby should come in October." He kissed her hands, her cheeks, her lips. "A baby, our baby, Beatrice. I am so happy I could burst." She laughed, feeling lighter than air. "I am happy too, and terrified. What if I am not a good mother?" "You will be a wonderful mother," Harrison said firmly. "Our child will be so lucky to have you. They will know what it means to be loved, to be accepted, to be valued for who they are. You will teach them that." The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice was sick for months, and as her belly grew, so did the whispers in town. People said cruel things about how big she was getting, how she was already huge and now she was even worse. But Harrison never wavered. He told her every day that she was beautiful, that she was glowing, that he had never seen anything more magnificent than his wife carrying their child. In late October, during a cold snap that threatened early snow, Beatrice went into labor. The midwife, Mrs. O'Brien, came to help, and Harrison paced outside the bedroom door for hours as Beatrice labored. It was long and painful and exhausting, but finally, just as the sun was setting, a baby's cry filled the cabin. "It is a boy," Mrs. O'Brien called out. "A big, healthy boy." Harrison burst into the room and went straight to Beatrice's side. She lay exhausted in the bed, her hair plastered to her face with sweat, but she was smiling. In her arms was the most beautiful thing Harrison had ever seen, a red-faced, squalling baby with a shock of dark hair. "Our son," Beatrice whispered. "Harrison, look at our son." Harrison reached out with trembling hands and touched the baby's tiny fist. Immediately, the little fingers wrapped around his thumb, and Harrison felt his heart crack open with love so fierce it hurt. "He is perfect. You are perfect." "Beatrice, you did it." "We did it," she corrected. "We made him together." They named him Henry Samuel Beck, after Harrison's father and Beatrice's. He was a big baby, over 9 pounds, with strong lungs and a powerful grip. As the days turned into weeks, he grew like a weed, healthy and happy and loved beyond measure. Beatrice was amazed at how much she loved being a mother. She had feared she would not know what to do, but instinct guided her. She nursed Henry, sang to him, rocked him when he cried. Harrison was a devoted father, coming home from the ranch each day eager to hold his son, to play with him, to watch him grow. The town's opinion did not change overnight, but gradually, some people began to soften. Mrs. Chen brought by baby clothes her own grandchildren had outgrown. Reverend Potter stopped by to bless the baby. Even some of the families who had snubbed Beatrice before began to nod to her on the street, acknowledging her existence if not quite accepting her. Martha Henderson, now married to a mine owner and pregnant herself, never apologized. But one day when Beatrice was in town with Henry, Martha stopped and looked at the baby. "He is a fine child," she said stiffly. "Thank you," Beatrice replied, equally formal. Martha hesitated, something working in her face. "You seem happy." "I am, very happy." "I suppose I was wrong about your husband courting you out of pity." It was the closest thing to an apology Beatrice would ever get from Martha Henderson. She nodded, accepting it for what it was. "I suppose you were." Martha walked away, and Beatrice felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She did not need Martha's approval or the town's acceptance. She had Harrison and Henry and a life she had built with her own hands. She had love, real and true and powerful. That was enough. That was everything. The years flowed by like water. Henry grew into a sturdy, cheerful child who had his father's eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. 2 years after Henry was born, Beatrice had a daughter, Grace Dorothy Beck, with golden hair and a sweet disposition. 3 years after that came another son, William Harrison Beck, who was wild and reckless from the moment he could walk. Harrison expanded the cabin, adding rooms as their family grew. He saved and bought more land, eventually building their small holding into a modest but successful ranch. Beatrice worked beside him, proving over and over that her strength was an asset, that she could do the work of 2 men when needed. Together, they built something lasting, something real. The children grew up knowing they were loved. Henry became tall and strong like both his parents, a natural cowboy who could break horses with patience and skill. Grace had her mother's kind heart and her father's steady nature, and she loved working with the animals. William was the wild one, always climbing trees and getting into mischief, but he had a good heart underneath his reckless exterior. As the children grew older, Beatrice made sure to teach them what she had learned. "People will judge you," she told them. "They will make assumptions based on how you look, how you speak, where you come from. But what matters is who you are inside. What matters is how you treat others, how you live your life, what you stand for." "Like how Papa stood for you," Henry said. He was 12 now, old enough to understand the story of how his parents had met. "Yes," Beatrice said, smiling. "Your father saw me when no one else did. He loved me when I thought I was unlovable, and he taught me that I was strong and beautiful just as I was." "You are beautiful, Mama," Grace said loyally. She was 10, with her father's eyes and a fierce love for her mother. "You are the strongest person I know," Henry added. "Stronger than any of the men in town." Beatrice pulled her children close, feeling her heart swell with gratitude. "And you three are the best things that ever happened to me. Well, after your father." Harrison, overhearing from the doorway, grinned. "I will take second place to our children any day." The children ran to him, and he scooped them up despite their size. William on one arm, Grace on the other, Henry laughing beside them. Beatrice watched her family, this impossible, beautiful family, and felt a peace she had never known in her youth. She was 45 years old now, and her body showed the years of hard work and childbearing. Her hair had threads of silver, her face had lines that had not been there before. But when Harrison looked at her, she still saw love in his eyes, still felt desired and cherished. "You are even more beautiful now than the day I met you," he told her one night as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. "You are blind," she teased. "I see perfectly clearly. I see the woman who has been my partner for 26 years. The woman who bore my children and helped me build this ranch. The woman who makes me laugh and challenges me and loves me despite all my faults. That is the most beautiful thing in the world." Beatrice leaned her head on his shoulder, content. "I never thought I would have this life. I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Harrison admitted. "I was drifting before I met you, working ranch to ranch, no real purpose. But then I saw you lifting those feed sacks, standing tall despite the mockery, and I knew you were what I had been looking for. Someone real, someone strong, someone who could build a life with me, not just lean on me." "We built a good life," Beatrice said. "The best life," Harrison agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the births of their children, every joy and sorrow of their years together. The ranch was quiet around them, the children asleep inside, the horses content in the barn. Everything they had worked for, everything they had built, spread out before them in the gathering darkness. "You ever regret it?" Beatrice asked quietly. "Standing up for me that day, choosing me when you could have had anyone else?" Harrison took her hand, his thumb rubbing gently over her knuckles in a gesture that had become habit over the years. "Never, not for a single moment. You are my heart, Beatrice. You always have been, you always will be." She turned to kiss him, and it was as sweet as their first kiss, as meaningful as their wedding kiss, as comfortable as the thousands of kisses they had shared over the years. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I love you," Beatrice said. "I love you too," Harrison replied. Forever and always. As the years continued, Henry grew into a fine young man and took over more of the ranch work, eventually meeting and marrying a strong-willed young woman named Sarah, who reminded Beatrice a bit of herself. Grace followed her heart and became a teacher in Montezuma, winning over even the most stubborn parents with her patience and skill. William, to everyone's surprise, discovered a talent for veterinary medicine and went away to study, though he came home often to visit. Harrison and Beatrice grew old together, their hair silvering, their bodies slowing, but their love never dimming. They sat on their porch most evenings, holding hands and watching the mountains change with the seasons. They told stories to their grandchildren, taught them about hard work and kindness, and standing up for what was right. Beatrice never forgot what it felt like to be ridiculed, to be made to feel less than human because of her body. But she also never forgot the moment Harrison Beck had looked at her and seen something worth loving. That moment had changed everything, had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. On their 50th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch to celebrate. There was food and music and laughter, and when the sun began to set, Harrison stood and raised his glass. 50 years ago, he said, his voice still strong despite his 72 years, I met a woman who changed my life. Everyone told me I was making a mistake. They said she was not beautiful, not worthy, not the kind of woman a man should want. But I knew better. I knew from the first moment I saw her that Beatrice Walsh was the strongest, most beautiful woman I would ever meet, and 50 years of marriage have only proven me right. He turned to Beatrice, who sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. You are strong and beautiful just as you are, he said, echoing the words he had spoken so long ago. You were then, you are now, you always will be. Thank you for 50 years of love, of partnership, of joy. Thank you for our children and grandchildren. Thank you for building this life with me. You are my everything. The family cheered and applauded, but Beatrice only had eyes for Harrison. She stood, her joints protesting but her heart soaring, and took her husband's hands. You saved me, she said. Not by changing me, but by loving me. You showed me that I was worthy of love, of respect, of happiness. You gave me a life I never dreamed possible, and I have loved every moment of it, every moment with you. Here is to 50 more years. To 50 more years, Harrison echoed, and they kissed as their family cheered around them. But it was not 50 more years. Harrison passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years later at the age of 75. Beatrice held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering all the love in her heart into his ear. When he was gone, she wept for days, mourning the loss of the man who had been her partner, her love, her reason for believing in herself, but she did not break. Harrison had taught her that she was strong, and she was. She continued to live at the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She told stories about Harrison, keeping his memory alive, making sure everyone knew the kind of man he had been. She lived to be 83 years old, a remarkable age for the time. In her final days, lying in bed surrounded by her family, she smiled at the memories that filled her mind. She remembered the first time Harrison had spoken to her, the first time he had touched her hand, the first time he had said he loved her. She remembered building their cabin, raising their children, growing old together on their porch. "Mama," Henry said, holding her hand. He was 62 now, with grandchildren of his own. "Is there anything you need?" Beatrice looked at her eldest son, at Grace and William standing beside him, at the grandchildren and great-grandchildren filling the room. "I have everything I need," she said. "I have all of you. I have a life full of love, and soon I will see your father again." "Tell him we miss him," Grace said through her tears. "Tell him thank you," William added, "for showing us what love looks like." Beatrice smiled. "He knows, he always knew." She closed her eyes, feeling peaceful and content. She had lived a good life, a full life, a life that had started with ridicule and pain but had blossomed into more joy than she had ever thought possible. She had been loved, truly and deeply loved, by a man who had seen her worth when no one else had. She had raised children who knew their value, who carried Harrison's lessons of kindness and acceptance into the world. As she drifted away, she heard Harrison's voice, warm and familiar. "You are strong and beautiful just as you are." "I know," she whispered back. "You taught me that." And then she was gone, leaving behind a legacy of love, of strength, of courage in the face of cruelty. The family buried her beside Harrison on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. On the shared headstone, beneath their names and dates, Henry had carved the words his father had spoken so many years ago, the words that had changed everything. "You are strong and beautiful just as you are." Those words became the family motto, passed down through generations. Henry told his grandchildren about their remarkable great-grandmother, how she had been mocked and ridiculed but had never let it break her spirit. He told them about Harrison Beck, the cowboy who had seen what everyone else had missed, who had loved without condition or reservation. The story spread beyond the family, becoming a legend in Montezuma. The tale of Beatrice Walsh and Harrison Beck, of love that defied convention, of strength that came from within, of beauty that had nothing to do with size or shape or society's narrow definitions. Young girls who were told they were too much or not enough heard the story and found courage. Young men learned what it meant to truly see someone, to love them for who they were rather than what they looked like. The ranch stayed in the family for over 100 years, a testament to what Harrison and Beatrice had built together. And every person who lived there, who walked the land they had tamed, who sat on the porch where they had spent countless evenings together, felt the echo of their love. It was a love that had started with a simple act of kindness, with one man willing to look past surface appearances and see the truth beneath. It had grown into something profound, something lasting, something that changed not just 2 lives but generations of lives that followed. And it all began with a heavy sack of feed, a mocking crowd, and a cowboy who had the courage to say what no one else would. "You are strong and beautiful just as you are.